The old man's cane hit the floor, and that's when she lost it. "Sir, I need you to sit down and stop holding up my aisle." Her voice cracked through the cabin like a slap. Every head turned. The woman across the row froze with her hand over her mouth. A businessman 2 rows back stopped scrolling his phone. 94-year-old Walter Combs stood frozen between his seat and the aisle, his knees locked, his hand trembling as he reached for the cane he'd just dropped. "I was only trying to reach my bag, ma'am," he said quietly. "My medication is in there." "Then you should have packed it in your pocket like everyone else," the flight attendant snapped, stepping over his cane instead of picking it up. "We're already behind schedule because of you." Gasps rippled through the cabin. Nobody moved to help. Nobody said a word. The old man's weathered hands shook as he lowered himself back into his seat, his dignity crumbling in front of 40 strangers. What none of them knew, what she was about to find out, was exactly who this man was. Walter had boarded that morning wearing his faded veteran's cap, the one that read Korea 1953, retired. He'd flown once a year for the past decade, always on this same route, always to visit a grave he refused to talk about. This year, his hip made walking harder. His hands shook more than they used to, but he still stood every time the flag came on the overhead screen before takeoff. Still saluted quietly when nobody was watching. The flight attendant's name was Rachel Tanner. She'd been up since for that morning after a red-eye the night before, running on 2 hours of sleep and a canceled connection that left her covering someone else's shift. Her supervisor had already written her up twice that month. She wasn't a cruel woman. She was an exhausted one, drowning in a job that never seemed to give her room to breathe, and Walter had simply been standing in the wrong place at the wrong moment. But none of that mattered to the woman in seat 14C, who leaned toward her husband and whispered, "Did she really just do that to a man his age?" If you believe kindness still matters, even on the worst days, even when nobody's watching, hit that subscribe button before we go further. Because what happens next on this flight is going to change how you see every stranger you pass. 20 minutes into the flight, the turbulence hit. The plane dropped hard enough that drink carts rattled and a child in row 9 started crying. Rachel gripped the seat back in front of her, her professional composure slipping into something rawer, fear. And it was Walter, the man she'd humiliated in front of the entire cabin, who reached over without a word and steadied her arm. "Breathe," he said softly. "I've flown through worse than this. You're doing fine." She stared at him, stunned. Nobody had ever responded to her that way. Certainly not after how she'd treated him. "Why are you being kind to me?" she asked, voice shaking. "Because someone was kind to me once, when I didn't deserve it," Walter said. "I never forgot it." The turbulence passed. The cabin settled. But something in Rachel had cracked open, and she couldn't look away from him anymore. She noticed the small pin on his lapel then, an insignia she recognized from a photograph her own grandfather used to keep on his nightstand. A photograph of men standing beside a battered transport plane, somewhere in Korea, decades before she was born. "That pin," she whispered. "Where did you get that pin?" Walter's eyes softened, distant, like he was looking through her into another decade entirely. "A boy gave it to me, 19 years old, scared out of his mind. I pulled him out of a burning transport when nobody else would go back for him. He gave me this pin off his own jacket and made me promise I'd carry it the rest of my life." Rachel's hands went cold. "What was his name?" "Daniel Tanner," Walter said. Everybody called him Danny. The name hit her like the turbulence had. Sudden, violent, impossible to brace for. "That was my grandfather's name," she said, barely audible. "He died before I was born. My father never even had a photograph of him in uniform. Just stories." The cabin around them had gone quiet, passengers leaning in without meaning to, sensing something enormous was unfolding in row 22. Walter reached into his jacket with trembling fingers and pulled out a worn photograph, edges soft from 70 years of handling. 2 young soldiers, arms around each other, grinning like the world hadn't tried to kill them yet. "That's him," Walter said. "That's your grandfather, the bravest man I ever served with. He didn't make it home, but I made sure his family got his letters. I made sure someone remembered his name." Rachel's tears came without permission, sliding down her face in front of everyone she'd just embarrassed herself before. The businessman who'd been scrolling his phone was recording now, quietly, respectfully. The woman in 14C had her hand pressed to her heart. "I'm so sorry," Rachel whispered, "for how I spoke to you. You have no idea. You didn't know," Walter said gently. "That's the thing about people, Rachel. You never know who's sitting in front of you. The tired ones, the struggling ones, the ones who look like nobody. Sometimes they're carrying the heaviest stories of all." By the time the plane landed, the entire cabin had heard the story. Passengers who'd watched Rachel snap at an old man now watched her kneel beside his seat, holding his hand like family, because, in every way that mattered, she was. Walter never made it to speak at the airport gate that day. Instead, Rachel walked him off the plane herself, arm looped gently through his, cane in her other hand, past 40 strangers who now looked at both of them with something like reverence. Sometimes the person you dismiss too quickly is the one who changes everything you thought you knew about your own family, your own history, your own heart. If the story moved you, share it with someone who needs the reminder that kindness always finds its way back around. And subscribe for more true-to-life stories about the strangers who turn out to matter most.